Hey, welcome back to another one of our Sacred Season videos where we're just kind of leading you in a Bible study type way through this Lent season leading up to Resurrection Weekend. Now, here's what I want you to do. I don't want you just to hear these things and like, okay, that's a good point or whatever. I want you to go read these moments in the library of Scripture. And what we're doing is we're looking at the week of Passion Week that leads up to Resurrection Sunday. And how does it tie to the Old Testament? Where are the ties there and some typology and the connections? And today, I want to look at what Jesus did on the night he was betrayed, where he is at the Passover meal. Now, why was he there? Well, obviously, Jewish people had celebrated it for thousands of years, and that was the moment where he flips it all on his head. It's like, hey, I know you have celebrated this, not just with the disciples in the room for your entire life, but you've done this, and you've heard generation after generation after generation has remembered this moment where they were passed over. So where's that at? Well, we're going to go to Exodus chapter 12, and we're going to kind of see what's happening. But to set the scene, in this moment, God has sent Moses to Egypt to deliver the people of God, all right? So he gets there and he goes to Pharaoh and he says, let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, And he's like, let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, ain't gonna happen, right? Or however he said it. And then it goes through the plagues, and you know the different plagues. If you didn't, again, go read the book of Exodus. It will enlighten you, and you're gonna be like, my goodness, this is gonna look like an HBO Max series of what's going on. But he gets to the last one where God has essentially had enough of Pharaoh, and he has sent 9 plagues. Pharaoh continues to not let God's people go from slavery and bondage. And then this is what happens. It's starting in verse 12 of Exodus chapter 12. On that night, I will pass through the land of Egypt and strike down every firstborn son and firstborn male animal in the land of Egypt. I will execute judgment against all gods of Egypt, for I am the Lord. But the blood on your doorpost will serve as a sign, marking the houses where you are staying. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. This plague of death will not touch you when I strike the land of Egypt. This is a day to remember. This is why they did it. Each year, from generation to generation, you must celebrate it as a special festival to the Lord. This is a law for all time. So essentially what God tells them is, hey, take the blood of an innocent lamb, put it on the doorpost, and the angel of death will pass over you, and you will not experience the plague. So that's what they're celebrating. That's why Jesus was there at the Passover meal when he takes the bread and the wine. Now, what do I want you to see when you're reading Genesis 12 or when you go to Matthew 26 or where you see where Paul talks about it to the early church in 1 Corinthians 11? Well, here's what I want you to get. 3 things. Number 1 is this is another moment, yet again, that we see God provides for his people. Now, the issue is, if you've had moments where you felt like God hasn't provided, you're like, I don't know about that. But if you have to look at the core, and I'm not minimizing something maybe you've been through, but if you look at the core of who Yahweh is, he is a provider for his children if we just trust him. And I know I'm almost making it sound over simple, but it's true. You see, thousands of years ago with a covenant that wasn't even as good as ours, according to Hebrews chapter 10, and covenant meaning relationship with God, and he provides for his people. Even in this moment of death, he provides for his people. And just let that encourage you, man. I don't know what you need God to provide, but just trust him. He will provide even when it seems like death might be moving through your land. Obviously talking figuratively there, but here's the next thing I want you to see as well. That is more than a ritual. This became more than a ritual as they had to do the Passover meal every year that we just read from generation to generation, all the way to the point where Jesus does it. Still to this day, so many Jewish people celebrated, and we celebrated as well on that Maundy Thursday leading into Resurrection Sunday. But here's the thing. It was more than a ritual. It was an identity as God's people. And you know what I've learned? And maybe this is just me. I don't know if you can relate. Sometimes when I walk with Jesus, things can just become a ritual. Church becomes a ritual. Generosity becomes a ritual. Being in community becomes a ritual. Reading my Bible, praying can become a ritual. Instead, if we can move it to that relationship where it's our identity. Why do I pray? Because I am a child of God. Why do I read the library of Scripture? Because I want to know what he has said and see it come alive in my life. life. Why do I go to church, right? Like, why spend some time around messy people? Because I know I need community, and that is my identity in the people of God. So here's the thing with the Passover should never have been just a ritual, and I'm not saying it was, but it was their identity as people that God loved and he saved, not a ritual. And it goes from ritual to relationship, and you see that as your identity. And here's the last thing, then and now. Even though this was instituted thousands of years ago, it's something we still get to do, that we still get to stop. 1 Corinthians 11, when you can call it communion, the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, taking the bread and remembering that this is the example of God's body, Jesus' body that he gave for us. The blood that he shed for us. Remember, it was the innocent lamb that had to been put on the doorpost so the angel of death would pass over. It is a typology for us as believers in Jesus that he shed his blood for us. 1 Corinthians 5:7, Christ is our Passover lamb and has been sacrificed for us. And think of the doorpost, think of the cross. Jesus shed his blood on the cross so death can pass over us, where we don't feel the sting of it. But now we have abundant life. Here's what I'm going to challenge you to do. I would say find some time. Take communion by yourself. Take the Lord's Supper by yourself. Grab some bread, grab some wine or some juice, whatever, and just stop. I love 1 Corinthians 11:26, where he says, every time you do this is the words of Jesus, you are announcing what he did in remembrance of him. So you're announcing to every situation, every circumstance, every doubt, every fear, every issue, every opportunity, whatever it might be, that Jesus is king. And because of that, you can do hard things, difficult things, and see the goodness of God in your life. So take a moment, take communion. You're like, well, doesn't someone have to bless it? For us in our faith, we do not believe that. I don't see anywhere in scripture that says it has to be administered to me by a priest or a pastor or a reverend or a online prophet or whatever it might be, okay? Just take it for yourself and stop and remember what Jesus did for you and know that God always provides. Don't let it be a ritual. Let it be a relationship that becomes your identity. And know that even now, all this time later, he is still crazy about you, and you get to announce what he did in your life. Until next time, I hope you are enjoying this sacred season. Get in those scriptures, Genesis 12, Matthew 26, 1 Corinthians 11, and let it come alive to you. We'll talk to you soon.